CYP, along with Cyrus, who, can we just give a round of applause for Cyrus? He truly is the brains behind getting all of our wonderful folks up here. And I just show up and make some pretty graphic on Canva and call it a day. So, again, thank you all for being here. The Coffee with a Cause is a monthly series. You can find more information on CYP's website. We tackle a different hot topic in the nonprofit or social issue world every month. So we would love to continue to have you here. But you're not here for me. You're here for these 5 wonderful panelists up here. So I am going to, this is always the awkward part where you all try to decide what order you're going to go in, or if you're going to, rock, paper, scissors, that. But I would love for all of you to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization and why you are here today on this panel.
I'm Sam Schuler. I'm with Blueprint Social Services of Central Ohio, or LSS. LSS owns about 900 units of affordable housing that's dedicated to seniors who have lower income. I just started there actually in February, but I've been in affordable housing pretty much my whole career, so for the last 23 years before that. So prior to that, I worked for an agency that did permanent supportive housing, so that's housing targeted at people who are experiencing chronic homelessness and have some sort of disability.
I'm Stephanie Rhodes. I'm a senior portfolio manager at National Church Residences. National Church Residences is the nation's largest provider of affordable housing plus services for seniors. We're actually headquartered here in Upper Arlington, and we have a pretty large Central Ohio footprint. We own 3,600 units across 48 communities. But across the country, we're in 24 states. We own or manage over 350 communities in 24 states, and we serve over 23,000 seniors go to sleep in one of our homes. I started my career at National Church Residences 9 years ago on the development team, doing mostly the low-income housing tax credit program, or the LIHTC program. And if you're not familiar with that, I won't give you a lesson because it's complicated. But it is the largest source of financing right now in the country for the building of new and the renovating of existing affordable housing. In that position, I completed over 10 projects across 5 states for a total of $100 million in development costs, and kind of quickly became an expert in a portion of our portfolio that is a HUD subsidized. It's called PRAC. It's a budget-based subsidy for seniors over 62 and over. And National Church Residences at one point was the largest owner of PRACs in the country. We now own approximately 70 PRACs and manage an additional 15 to 20. And so in my new position, I lead the strategic asset management of that 70-unit portfolio, really focusing on rent growth, capital projects, and long-term preservation strategies for that. And then lastly, I'm our HUD liaison. So any issues or opportunities, policy, anything related to HUD from the field office all the way up to headquarters is under my purview.
My name is Grant Miller. I'm the legislative liaison at the Ohio Housing and Finance Agency, oftentimes referred to as OFA. We administer the low-income housing tax credit for the state of Ohio. So Stephanie, thank you for a federal program. It's allocated to us. Developing communities like National Church Residents apply for that funding through us, and it's our job to allocate that out to create affordable housing. That's kind of the very basic part of it. My position as legislative liaison is I meet with the lawmakers in DC and Columbus and say, we need more LIHTC, we need more money for housing. And that's, sometimes it's a difficult conversation, sometimes it's a really easy conversation. But I've been at the agency 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was an aide at the State House. So I'm, on the kind of dealer side of LIHTC as opposed to the applicant side.
I'm Shay Mock. I'm the Assistant Vice President of the Housing Choice Voucher Program at Columbus College Housing Authority. I've been at the agency for close to 12 years, so it'll be 12 years next month. I currently oversee the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So all of our recertifications for a lot of our clients and residents throughout the metropolitan area, interim, so income changes throughout their process with us. Moving while they're moving in the process is kind of a challenging thing, so they can get from one place to another. Ports, when we port people in from different counties, cities, states, a lot of people don't know that they can port their vouchers all across the country and still be subsidized through our HUD program. CMHA currently is a government and or private, so it's quasi-government. We have a private and public partnership. So we have a lot of developments that we currently own outright. And then we also provide subsidies through the Section 8 Housing Voucher Program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janine Hooks, and I am here representing the Miracit Development Corporation. I am a faith-based nonprofit community development organization that's focused on not only housing, but also community engagement, building people up, restoring lives, and we have commercial interests. So I'm really kind of a recipient or a beneficiary and or have meetings with every single person on this panel to advance what we're doing in our area. So I'm kind of hyper-local. I'm focused on the Mock Road corridor. If you don't know where Mock Road is, we're off of Sunbury Road, kind of between Easton and the airport, northeast Ohio. I have 5,000 rooftops in my footprint that we serve. So what is a CDC? A CDC really evolves out of community needs. So Miracit Development Corporation, Miracit being an acronym for Miracle City, was born out of a prophecy given to our bishop, Edgar Posey, of Living Faith Apostolic Church, which we are an extension of that ministry, to go out and reclaim the neighborhood around the church. So this is where you see all of these agencies, good works, actually in action hitting the ground. So through that, and we've been established for 30 years, so I like to say that we're actually an institution. And in doing that, the CDC built up over 320 homes, senior housing, low-income housing, subsidized housing, all the way to market rate housing, also having commercial interest. So it is a real success story, a miracle within the heart of the city, right in the urban core, if you will. So what I'm doing, I've been there for a year and a half. Why am I with Miracit? It allowed me to bring all of my experiences across various sectors to this work, but to also be faith forward. I love being able to talk about my work in the context of, yes, we build houses, yes, we help people restore their lives, yes, we help them build their businesses, but it's all in the interest of bringing souls to salvation. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And I love being able to be in spaces like this and be very faith forward, because I think that is what all of our work lends to, right? Is helping people live and lead better lives so they can flourish, not just in the here and now, for generations to come, and then in the hereafter. So if you give me 5 minutes, I'll talk for 10. I love my work, and I'm excited to glean and learn from my colleagues here on the panel. But I'm also here to kind of understand what your needs are. I have not been in the young professional space for a very, very, very long time. So even though I'm past the point of being young, I want to know what it is that you're looking for so that I can learn from you. I can take that back to the community, and I can take that into my partner conversations as we talk about how to elevate this work in this ecosystem together.
Wonderful. And we'll have time for questions at the end. I'll leave a little bit more since we have a bigger group today, but thank you all for that. So besides the obvious that, houses that seem to be, $150,000, $200,000 10 years ago are now $400,000, $500,000. Well, how would you describe the current climate of the housing market and affordable housing? And how has that changed over the past 5 years, 10 years from your perspective?
Me? All right. On the legislative side, which is kind of where I'll focus some of my remarks, I think it's urgent but responsive. Like, government moves so slowly. And that is tough. It is tough to stay optimistic or bought in when it takes years for any type of meaningful legislation to pass. But I hear people in Columbus or DC talk about housing crisis that I never thought they would. And I see people come to me and call me in meetings and say like, Grant, my daughters can't buy a home near us where we grew up, they're priced out, what can we do? And that gets them at the table. So as much as an issue it is, there is a response happening. The Ohio Senate just has a committed standing committee on housing, which is like a new kind of showcase of initiative from them. There's been really meaningful legislation being passed in DC recently, to get that across the line. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act. There's a lot into it, but it'll make a difference if it's implemented effectively. So we're seeing housing be on a platform, and that did not happen 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, housing was something they talked about. It's like the market will take care of it. We don't have to do anything. Whether it's COVID, whether it's economic changes, like it's now something that people want to take a proactive approach to and part of the solution. And it's not just dismissed as a niche thing that urban communities have to deal with. It's something that is getting a lot of attention.
Well, just to add a stat to all that, so I wasn't reading your tax because since 2017, average earnings have grown 43%, while home prices have grown 81 and rents 54. I mean, it's just that simple. It's more expensive and people make less. So and then add to the fact that we spent lots of time not building homes for lots of various reasons, and that's what's driving the price up, because so you just you finally now have it to the place where people can see it, as opposed to just like I think 10 years ago it was kind of like Chicken Little, and now the sky's really falling. I was like, oh man, we should have listened to Chicken Little. It's kind of where we are.
I can speak specifically to the senior population, and really it speaks to the changing population that we look at that is in need of affordable housing, because we know that the senior population is growing much faster than the general population. It's projected to grow by 42% by 2050, and the general population is only projected to grow about 12 to 23% in that same time. And so the population is aging. We also know that 1 out of 3 seniors is housing cost burden, which means that they pay more than 30% of their income on housing costs. And 1 out of every 4 seniors is, 1 out of every 4 homeless individuals are over the age of 55, and oftentimes they're experiencing homelessness for the first time. And so when we look at what's changing in the population, it's really getting older. We talked about the lack of availability of homes, especially here in Franklin County. The trends are the same. I think it's 46% of seniors in Franklin County are also extremely housing cost burdened. So we see it here in our own community. There's just not enough affordable homes for all individuals, let alone seniors. And then when they do find those homes, they're not what we would consider age ready. They're not, only 1 in 10 homes are accessible or age ready for seniors, and they're able to adapt to the changing needs of seniors as they age. So that's really, I think, when we look at what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years, but also as we're looking forward to what the needs are as far as affordable housing is, we really have to pay attention to the needs of our seniors.
I wanted to piggyback off of you. The climate and the understanding of what affordability is really huge right now. A lot of times people think of affordability and they think extremely low income or low income. They're not accounting for middle class, everyday workers in what we consider workforce housing, right? And those things have to be also affordable. It's not just for the top 1%, it's everything underneath that umbrella. So just ensuring that over the next 5 to 10 years, we are getting more creative with how we develop housing. Kind of to your point as well, our boomers that's a really large population. And so when everyone is getting ready to start to retire, there is no space that is going to cater to them currently. So we have to be extremely creative in the way that we design buildings right now, the way that we address owning homes as they begin to start to sell homes as well. The price just kind of keeps skyrocketing.
So let me take it a couple ticks further and be very graphic about what affordability looks like. In my neighborhood, an extremely low income, with one of my units being CNHA subsidized, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, no central air unit is $850. Right? I just want to make it really real for you when we're talking about affordable housing. So, and most of these people, when we talk about extremely cost burden, 50% or more of their income is going towards their rent. So now you're in a situation where you have to make some life choices, which are critical, can be painful, and in cases of our seniors, can be life-threatening. If you've got to choose between paying your rent or prescriptions. So this is a serious topic that we're dealing with, and we see the full cycle of it in the CDC community movement or environment or my footprint and what we're dealing with. So not only do I have the people that are coming out of school or college that are looking for housing, I've got the workforce housing issue, and then I've got the aging population issue, and then I've got a density issue that we're trying to solve. Churches such as mine, we own land, so there's an opportunity for us to start building, but we've got to build with intentionality and we've got to build smart. I've got to build housing that's going to accommodate all of those demographics and how they're changing and what their changing needs are. And I've got to cast my anchor forward 15, 20, 25 years to plan for that, because I'm talking about community development. The other thing I don't want to get lost in the thread is that we're talking about affordable housing, but if we go back, I always have to go back before the starting point, we really have an economic mobility issue. People aren't making enough money to afford the housing that even if we are bringing it to market, they can't afford to live in that housing. And then developers are having a hard time affording to rehab existing housing so that it is presenting a quality of life. I don't mean to paint a really dark or bleak picture, but this is the reality that we're dealing with. So I think this is what, if you got up at 7 o'clock in the morning and come here, this is what you're gonna get from me, right?
Happy Wednesday.
I'm just gonna shoot it straight, because that's the only way that we can be empowered or inspired to go out and say something and do something different. So think about your neighbor, your friend, your family member that is a cost burden with their mortgage or their housing costs. What does that look like? What kind of silent suffering are they experiencing? And then how can you elevate that conversation in rooms like these so that we can start thinking creatively and innovatively towards the economic mobility, private-public partnerships? How do we redefine and create and innovate new ways to get people closer to housing than being really comfortable where we are in the lives that we get to live, which is actually a privilege.
And Jenny mentioned something pretty profound about churches owning land, and something that I think has changed recently is this movement, Yes, in God's Backyard, which is really something that you wouldn't have seen 5 to 10 years ago, but we're partnering, National Church Residences partners with churches all over the country to develop affordable housing, provide services for seniors. And I think even here in Central Ohio, we have this movement where churches are partnering with different development organizations, CDCs, and really saying, like, this is our neighborhood, these are our neighbors, and we want to be a part of the solution. And that also is really in combating sort of this, like, not in my backyard mentality, which was really sort of what we saw on the neighborhood level for so long. And so it's really great to see, just like Grant was saying, the attention to it, and everybody understands the need, but we're also seeing on a local level that churches and the faith institutions are also stepping up and becoming a part of the solution.
Yeah, I mean, what better place for you to go to your place of worship or faith or organization and say, hey, I want to help figure out housing. You all are experts in your given field, and figure out what's happening in terms of how do you help churches, because let me tell you, churches aren't experts at development. I mean, development is a whole complex business in and of itself. So if you have expertise or even a passion for that type of work, going to places like that or CDCs and saying, how can I help, is a huge asset that can be converted into manifesting real solutions in the community.
Well, if you're interested in like, well, what's in it for me, I will say, I've not been a young professional for a long time either. And
Don't get hard.
I bought my first home when I was 28. The average median age now, first time homeowners is 38. So it doesn't just, it's, so that's huge, huge difference. And I'm only, I think I've owned a home 30 years ago or so, like, so it's not, it's impacting the entire spectrum of folks, and it impacts seniors particularly, but also impacts young people quite a bit.
I need you to like tell that to my mom.
So she
Every time we see her, she's like, she asked my husband and I why we don't own a home, but we pay like $1,300 a month for a 2-bed, 2-bath in Hilliard, because I've lived there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we don't have like $400,000 cash lying around, which is like basically what you need out of the house.
I'll chat her up.
Make sure you add my mom to the chat.
But I also love having someone that will come in and fix my stuff and leave and not have to send me a bill. So, I'm not mad about it. So Shay, you mentioned, getting creative with how we are developing new properties and, integrating them into the communities. What does that look like? Or are there any of you that have, ideas from your organizations on what would be not necessarily a full solution, but like how are we getting creative with supporting the people that we work with?
So I can speak at least from the CMHA lens, right? We currently have a lot of project-based, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. So that is where the voucher itself stays with the unit and not necessarily moves with the resident, okay? In comparison to the Housing Choice Voucher Program, where they can kind of take their voucher with them to wherever they would like to locate or move. So we have created, for example, our Scholar House building. That's probably one of my favorite projects it was. And that is, we have one side that is for young mothers or expectant mothers that are going through school right now. So getting into those very specific specialized populations. The other side of our Scholar House is former foster youth. So at the age of 18, you age out of foster care. And then what, right? They're a lot, you can't stay. And you don't necessarily always have the resources, or the family that you were with may not have had the resources to be able to give you those life skills on what to do next. But if they are enrolled in school, we are providing housing. And that comes with, let's just say, 1-bedroom units. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to think in the scope of giving everybody a house, right? Student housing, studio apartments, 1-bedroom units that are fully furnished. They have a place to step into, right? Expectant mothers, there are daycares, a daycare at the bottom, playground, things to assist them. And then we reach out to a lot of our other agencies and partnering agencies for supportive wraparound services, so that we aren't just placing them in a location and saying, hey, you have a house, you have a roof over your head. No, they need support. There's tutoring, there's a computer lab, thinking of all of those different creative aspects as we move along. We're addressing the homelessness crisis for our veterans right now. So ensuring that we not only just hand them a voucher and say, hey, figure it out. We're saying, hey, we're now building this space specifically for you. We feel as though if you've served our country, we should also be giving back. And a lot of times that is lost on a lot of folks. It sounds like a great talking point, right? Like, yeah, we should do all of these things for our veterans, but we just don't see it. A lot of our veterans are living off the land. And so finding creative, different population points, specific population points, is an easier way to get creative inside
Talking about being creative, I'll talk a little bit about the capital stack of a typical affordable housing community for a second. And that really means like when we're building affordable housing, when we're building housing that has rents that are affordable to individuals, we can't just take out a large mortgage and pay debt service on that mortgage and survive off of a lower amount of rent. It just doesn't work that way. And so we fill those gaps with things like the low-income housing tax credit program. But unfortunately now that's not enough. It's anywhere from 30 to 60% of your capital stack, and so you have to figure out what are the other sources of financing that you can go in there. And so we, especially here in Central Ohio, have a lot of really great local partners, both public and private. The city of Columbus is a huge investor in affordable housing. In fact, in November, voters approved a $500 million bond program, which put the city of Columbus as the third largest municipal investor in affordable housing in the country, only behind New York and San Francisco, which is really incredible. It gives me a lot of optimism for Central Ohio and the city of Columbus. But we use the city of Columbus funding, we use Franklin County funding and other county funding. We use things like the real estate tax abatement program is another creative way for you to be able to make a deal work. We partner with organizations like CMHA. We partner with organizations like the Community Shelter Board. We partner with even healthcare institutions are starting to get into investing into affordable housing. And so you really have to look at, the typical affordable housing capital stack is 6, 7, 8, 9 deep as far as, soft loans, hard loans, grants, all of that combined to make a deal work. And so you really have to be creative. I'd say the other thing that is kind of near and dear to my heart is really looking at how you can manage your energy and water consumption. I think that's a really creative way. Not only is it really important in Central Ohio with data centers coming in, we don't have enough energy coming onto our grid. We don't have enough clean water, and data centers are coming in and using even more of that. So how can we reduce that need in our affordable housing, which also allows for reduced operating costs, and it also allows for a little bit more stability, which stability and predictability is extremely important in this industry. And so if you can do something like put solar panels on your roof, that you know that you're not going to have an increase in your electric bill because you're able to produce that power yourself, things like that can really help. And so getting creative, there's also organizations out there that help affordable housing developers and owners do that. And so I think leaning into that really helps kind of fill some of those gaps and helps with long-term stability of the community.
And I think if you are trying to figure out, like, well, what can I do to help? I think there are 3 big things. Supply side, to really, to make zoning something that does not get in the way of housing. And not just in Columbus, who did pass zone in, but also in your suburban communities. You can also help encourage folks to reduce the cost to build, because the add-ons and the slowness of getting building permits has a huge impact on how much the housing costs and then how much you can actually then rent or sell it for. And then the third, from my perspective, is we're not going to solve it with supply, because if you can't afford it, it doesn't matter how much there is. And I want to say a huge shout out to Shay and her team in CMHA. They are one of the best public housing authorities in the country. They give out every dime that comes in because they want to get as many people's houses as possible. And they're so creative, and they're really strategic in trying to create good communities for the folks that they serve and the partners they have. So thank you. But that's the other side. It's an income issue, and we need a lot more rent subsidy, and we need to encourage not just what we've got now, but even more. And we need to super encourage the federal government to get out of CMHA's way and let them use this funding to help solve this problem. Those are the 3 big things. If you walk away with nothing else, get rid of it. Stop the NIMBY, stop charging so much to build it, and please, can we get some help on the rent subsidy side? That's my mantra.
I'll add, going back to economic mobility and housing affordability, for me are 2 ends of the same stick. So being creative, one, for Miracet, we're committed to a mixed income community. I have to work really hard to make sure that folks don't drive through my corridor and only see low-income housing and want to continue low-income housing. Because if you concentrate poverty, what do you get? Right, so we're not doing that. So always fight for mixed income development. I would also say that focusing on the income side of it, help people understand where they can get better jobs, get educated, get certified, get credentialed in some of these trade positions, advanced manufacturing, so you can make money and afford the house. Affordable housing doesn't mean cheap, and it doesn't mean inexpensive. It doesn't mean that you always have to live or expect to live low class. Let's help people get those degrees and credentials so they can go buy what they want, right? And live the type of life that is the most desirable for them. So with Miraset, part of our plan is to have that full ecosystem where we have the financial education, the budgeting, the saving, the credit counseling, the home ownership programming. We're also building a workforce development pathway. So as you're coming through that, you're getting those credentials, you have access to better jobs. And then guess what? We're building housing. So you can buy a house from me, or you can get a house from CMHA, wherever you happen to be on that spectrum, and invest in yourself in that community. So community development, guys, that's another takeaway I want you to have. Think about not big government, not United States of America, although as awesome as we are, not state of Ohio, which is wonderful. Let's drill it down to your neighborhood, to your community. How can you make your community stronger and more committed to its sustainability and survivability and economically be insulated from all of these changes that happen from big G to little g down to your street?
Awesome. And I think that is a good segue to my next question is, so from my experience, we're talking about this mixed development, we're talking about, developing as a community or as a neighborhood in general. But in my head, and maybe I'm just cynical, they start developing, they put in a 7 Brew or a Starbucks and an Aldi, and then all of a sudden, rent prices go up or housing prices go up. So how can local governments, or how can we in this room advocate for growth and for development of our neighborhoods, but still maintain a livable area? Basically gentrification, we want economic growth, we want economic development, we want to bring people in, but we still want the people who live there to be able to stay there.
I think the communities that have a plan, the literal formal plan, that's transparent and members of the community can weigh in on it and view it and engage with it, tend to fare better in that regard. I think we're very lucky here in Columbus to have a city and neighborhoods that more or less have that and have a lot of bandwidth. I think it's difficult as you get to smaller cities and communities that their administrative staff just doesn't have the bandwidth and time to kind of engage with that. I think that's kind of sometimes where we see that overwhelming development come in, and developers apply for our programs, and I'm agnostic, but there are some that maybe push things a little too hard before communities ready, and I think that's when we see the negative effects of that. But in my position, my capacity, when I meet with local governments and the people that make up the staff, the ones that can stick to a vision of how they want to see the development and kind of let that happen on their terms tend to fare better. I know it's Cincinnati, Walnut Hills in Cincinnati has a really comprehensive plan and vision for growth where they're trying to use our programs and our developments as cornerstones for further development. And you go down there and you can kind of see points of that's part LIHTC, part market rate, and there's an affordable grocery store on the street level. And that's going to be tied into the pedestrian infrastructure that they're building. You kind of see the vision where it's not just Legos fitting in ways that don't fit, and then it's too car dependent, and people that live there are this isn't helping my day-to-day life. It might look shiny and new, but it's become a problem. I know that's a Cincinnati example, but that's something we see across the state. That's but a new part of my job is actually saying like, okay, I know we're trying to get funding, but also think about this holistically if we're doing this.
I think it's two sides. I think it's two sides, right? So, for instance, I live in King Lincoln, Bronzeville, and what I will say is I feel like that community has done it right, and we have to participate. You can't just watch things go up. You have to actively have a voice without also stopping growth, right? So there has to be a happy medium in between. I think that the developers there have done a great job with talking to the community and figuring out how to keep the character of that historical community. We see, I see a new development every other week. The houses are changing. And then the opposite side is, do you leave land vacant or homes that are abandoned? So you can't get one without the other, and I think that that's the point of having a lot of great conversation within the community, getting people to understand and pull them to the middle ground. So if you have the knowledge, or if you don't, go get it. Understand the historical context behind every community that you are moving into that space or currently existing in that space. It's not just specific to King Lincoln. You've got German Village, you've got Italian Village. All of those things, all of those places have unique character to those communities, and you don't want to completely upend those things, but you also want to develop. And so just having those conversations and joining those resident councils, a lot of times what I see, and I'm gonna be completely honest, is everybody is listening to the same voice over and over and over again. And so they're stopping construction, they're stopping development, or they're making developers tired. They're exhausting them. Yes, we don't want six stories, make it 5. Okay, we don't want 5 stories, make it 2. Okay, go back, I like the first one, give it 5. No, there's not enough parking, so understanding, like I said, where that happy medium is going to be really, really important, and you can't have a voice and things won't change if you don't show up.
I would echo all of this, like the change, the growth is happening, it's gonna bring change. If you don't get ahead of it as a community, then that development, that growth is gonna change you instead of you guiding that change. But I'll also just say one other thing is that low-income housing tax credit communities are required to stay affordable for 30 years. And so it actually creates a really big stabilizing factor for a neighborhood. And it's been found that when a LIHTC community comes into a neighborhood, it doesn't actually raise the costs of the surrounding areas. It's a huge stabilizing factor. And so I love that example of Walnut Hills as like using affordable housing as an anchor for growth around that. And we see that across the country. It's a really great tool when you look at a lot of these federal programs that require affordability for long periods, 30, 40 years. That allows for the stabilizing and sort of to stop a little bit of that gentrification in those communities.
And actually gentrification is not that bad of a word. If it's coming, let's find a way to leverage that activity, that interest, that investment, and work with it. And as everybody has said, be involved, be in the room, have your voice heard, understand the issues, represent the culture and the identity of the community. And so where is the best place to do that? The area councils, area commissions, civic associations, local community developer organizations. Email get civically involved. Hello. That matters, being civically minded and civically involved and encouraging others to do that is how you continue to press your voice forward and learn more, because these things happening in communities are not simple. They're extremely complex. You talk about capital stack 690, she's not playing. You talk about having an ecosystem of partnerships to try and bring a deal together. It literally takes 1.5 years to 2 years to get a project out of the ground. So, there's time for you to be involved, to be understood, to learn more, to share the message, and to be part of it. Because the key, I think what we're saying here is development is happening. If we do it right, development happens with and for the community and not just to the community.
I like to write notes, so then I can like reflect back on it. I'll try to remember that. Awesome. So I do want to leave time for audience questions, but I also want to end on a somewhat optimistic note. And so I skipped a bunch. I know I sent you guys questions to prepare, but we talked a lot about maybe the doom and gloom of the current situation. As far as affordable housing goes nationwide, really. But what gives you most optimism about what's coming? Or, you know, what's on the horizon that maybe isn't so scary for folks? If there is anything. I'll change the question if there isn't.
I would just echo kind of what we're talking about. Grant talked about this, I talked about this with the investment from the city of Columbus, the attention from local all the way up to the federal level that's been brought to affordable housing. It's like in the mainstream conversation. And everybody's recognizing that it's an issue. And so I think that's, you know, it's step number one. We have a long way to go from there. But I think that's important. I think like this room gives me a lot of optimism to see that so many young professionals are interested in affordable housing and interested in learning more, understand that it's an issue. I would echo what Janine said, like get involved in your local community, get on your community councils. There's really not like any sort of like requirements for like, you don't have to have a specific degree, you don't, whatever. It's like you're a member of that community, go to your community meetings, ask questions, and know that your voice does matter. It's not just about who you voted for president. It's really like affordable housing is local. It's a local issue. We have tools that come from the top, but really what your community looks like in that growth and providing affordable housing for your neighbors starts in your community. So that's what brings me optimism.
Build on that, we kind of spoke about this a little bit as a group, like the term like affordable housing and like affordability in general, like that was like a campaign buzzword. Like, that wasn't something that really appeared in like committees or policy. But now so many people know the statistics. You mentioned like first-time home buyers now here in Florida. Like that's a red flag. That's a cause for concern. So you know people understand what rent burden is. It's 50% of your like. These are specific statistics and data that law staff at the legislative level, lawmakers themselves, like understand and resonate. It's not just grocery prices are high. Like it is very like focused in solving an issue. So the fact that there's like a knowledge of that, or they're speaking the language, kind of like excites me a little bit. I don't have to do too much like education on the low income housing tax credit. They're like, we get it. Just tell us how we can make it better, and like that's moving things forward. But it takes time. I mean, we have a state low income housing tax credit that was just created 3 years ago at the State House. The policy process that went into that started in 2022. Last week I was just at the ribbon cutting for one of the very first developments. So it takes time, and that's tough. And I know we're trying to be optimistic. I'm optimistic that there's more coming. But you know, we knew the statistics in 2022. That's what we were trying to affect, and like it's just now getting to the point where it's occupied. But it's a long-term investment for the communities. It's kind of a long game. But people are willing to do the work now, and I hope it pays off. I'm optimistic that it will, but we got to do more.
You have to end with saying, I'm optimistic.
Yes, and I really am. I am. There's a lot of doom and gloom, but there's also like my line of work in housing. I sleep well at night, and I have peers that are in other sections that are like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, hey man, we got bills passing.
Well, I'll say, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hope is what you put in your anger, you cast it forward, and you work towards that daily. The partnerships that are happening gives me hope every day. The fact that I can send an email to CMHA, to what meeting to National Church Residences, and, you know, some of the big players in the city of Columbus, and they respond to little old Mirasit, Janine, and say, yeah, we'll come out. That gives me hope. Hope is when I can help a person move from New York to Ohio into one of our units and give them the keys, and they're grateful. Hope is helping one person at a time, and knowing that now I've got, I don't know, 40 or 50 new friends that have heard my voice, they know our story, go to my website, nurses.org, and come check us out, you know, be interested, be curious, and then lead with love, right? And do it from that place.
I think that's a really great message. And we, on our housing choice voucher side, I currently serve close to 15,000 families. There's an average of three to four people in a general household. However, half of our program are elderly and disabled. And so it gives me hope that we're having these conversations, so that you can get a better understanding. And in rooms just like this, you can go share what you have learned. You can, I don't want to say combative, but passionate, right? When folks are having conversations that doesn't think about the residents in mind or the community that we serve. They're not keeping them in mind as they are developing and or not developing. They're against developing. You want to be able to be in those rooms and be able to have your voice, share your opinion. You may not always agree, and that is okay. And voice that too, because that is the only way that people will make changes to development. Maybe you think that there should be additional supportive services here, or maybe the commercial space underneath should have a daycare, or all of those different things. Your voice matters. So just make sure that you guys are out in the community and being active participants as the word about affordable housing or housing in general is becoming an extremely high topic. Use that momentum and let's push that forward.
And awareness is huge because every great change is a tipping point, right? And that's what we're starting to see is we're getting to the tipping point. And so you've got to spread it like a virus, spread the word, and then eventually that tipping point comes, and the huge policy and commitment changes you need to get permanent change comes. And that's why I think we're also optimistic about this awareness level, because I can tell you 10 years ago there would not have been this many people in the room and nobody would have understood us. So we're getting there, and so that's what keeps me optimistic.
Thank you all for understanding the assignment. All right, so we have about 10 minutes. Is anyone here? Oh, okay. We'll go start here, and then we'll go to you, and then we'll go to you, and then we'll see where we're at.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for this, it's very informative. My name is Portland Rosa Jones, I've been in Columbus for 7 years, I work at the university, and my question is sort of a two-parter. I think it's mostly to do with the panel, maybe a little bit to do with Shay at the end there. I really care about affordable housing, but I don't sleep well at night because what I'm worried about is low income affordable housing, right? That's the issue that really keeps me up, and I'm wondering if maybe this panel, being the players that you are, like, if you could talk more about some of the discussions that you have in those rooms in terms of like when you're marketing this affordable housing, like how do we balance then, we're on a spectrum, right? And 50% of my income is very different than 50% of someone's income that makes $30,000 a year. So sort of like, are we sort of balancing that fairly? How do you balance that fairly, and how do you make sure that then this side of the spectrum doesn't get cut out of sort of that equation? I guess my other question is, because I am so concerned about low-income housing, I'm really concerned about our Section 8 voucher program. I started getting concerned about it when they outsourced it 3 years ago, and just outsourced the entire administration of it. And I remain concerned. I got the message last week just saying like, they were going to cut their standard of what they were willing to pay for vouchers moving forward. And as much as I admire this panel, I think I'm passionate. Rather than I'm passionate. As much as I admire this panel, I don't know if I necessarily agree with Samantha's comment about how every cent of CMHA goes back into the community. I think a lot of us follow the dispatch and sort of those articles that we've read about the $125,000 bonus their CEO got last year. It's not every cent, right? There are definitely some cents at the end of the year that are not going back to the community. So how do I reconcile? We have the best public housing authority in the country with, we can't pay our Section 8 housing vouchers this much anymore. We outsourced it for 3 years and are just bringing it back and we were offline for 4 months. And the fact that, I mean, we're trying to solve affordable housing here, but there's some people who that matters a lot more for, because in terms of that question of stability, some people can afford 50% rent and some people can't, right? They'll lose their home. So I guess I was just hoping that you all could kind of talk about that a little bit.
Okay, I think that's mostly your patient.
I was just Shane, you can take
So, I want to first acknowledge how you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So let me just take a moment to acknowledge that. Secondly, I think that, as I mentioned, when we first started, that CMHA is a quasi-governmental agency. What that means is that only a portion of our housing authority is public and governmental. The other side of our housing authority is private, right? And so those private developments, we push, that gives us the ability to push money into where there is no funding. And so I think a lot of people miss the piece that there's no funding coming from the top right now. That letter that you guys received, it is not a CMHA decision. It is a HUD decision.
Well, that's not entirely true, right?
Exactly.
Like, that is not entirely true. CMHA has the ability to set it within 90% and 110% of that standard rate. They were paying the 100%, 110, now they're gonna pay the 100%. That is a CMHA decision.
In order to keep our housing stabilized, right, and to not, so we either choose to go to like a median area, or we start to not give out vouchers. Like it has to build up, and it has to be addressed on multiple different fronts. So instead of saying, okay, well, we're gonna drop it completely down, we're gonna go from 110 to 100, so that we can make sure that we're able to house these special populations. I can't partner with any of these fellow agencies to do referrals into our project-based voucher program, into our housing choice voucher program, our VASH program, without being able to kind of like level it out. And so sometimes those hard decisions have to come in order for us to kind of stay afloat. Does that make sense?
And since, I want to defend this because I'm the one who said it. Is that okay? I'm here. So I want to say, first of all, if you go out in the development world, you can make a ton of money. So that's part of what CMHA's board has to consider when they're trying to attract talent. So we can argue about how much a bonus should or shouldn't be, but I just want to compare that to try to defend that, because that was not something you said. So whether that's fair or not, I think that board has to show proof, and I believe if you compare what people make in the development arena to what CMHA's president makes, but also to the choices that he has made in order to do exactly what we've been talking about up here, which is ensure that extremely low income people are being housed, but they're also being housed in communities with mixed incomes and planful community-based services. That's a really progressive strategy that you're not going to find in other communities. But on top of that, the federal government gives CMHA a pot of money. That's it. And they say, you figure it out. So if it is true, it's a pot of money, and they figure out how they're going to distribute it. And if they don't keep getting enough, they can't give more, and they can't even keep the people that are already on it if it starts to run out or they don't have enough. So when these huge rent increases happen and they got to try to figure out how to spread it out, I think that's what Shay's trying to say, is like, you got to make some tough choices in that situation. So I'm not going to argue that there aren't things that you're saying, because I don't want to discount what you're saying. I want to defend what I said earlier. But I also really want to say that, yes, let's keep talking to CMHA about the decisions they make, whether we're comfortable with them or not, but I really want to make sure everyone understands. Right now, HUD and HUD policies are, I'm not even going to be nice about it, off the chain insane. And that is making all the local folks just go, I'm doing the best I can. Now, please don't I don't want to discount what you're saying, and please keep pushing on CMHA for the things that you think are important, because I do agree with some of the things you've said, but I also want to I wanted to explain what I meant when I said I thought they were so good. That doesn't mean they can't be better. So I just felt like that's not fair to ask Shay to defend that I said it's put every dog out on the street, because that was me.
And this is not just a CMHA problem. We get vouchers from housing authorities across the country, and we're seeing that trend across the country, and even worse. Like in Atlanta, they not only like in CMHA for a while, it was like, okay, well, we might not increase our standard, but we'll keep it the same. In Atlanta, it's been reducing for years. I mean, like and for an owner, this is a huge math problem for us. And so I recognize the trend that you're seeing is not only just here in CMHA, but in other housing authorities across the country. And that's where, I did say housing is local, but also like the amount of money that like HUD gives the housing authorities, they don't really have a say in that. And it's not enough. And even if it stays the same as the previous budget cycle, or we have a continuing resolution, and so therefore it does stay the same, the costs are going higher, right? So you can't spread that dollar as far as it went before. And so I think it is I agree with Stan, like keep pushing on it, keep asking the right questions, but it's a math problem across the country right now.
Thank you for that question. And thank you all for chiming in. Yes.
Hi, Nick Forkamp. I'm a member here on Arlington City Council. So welcome everybody. My background is in real estate as a real estate appraiser with Robert Weiler Company, who does a whole bunch of development also. So my question is, I've been in this conversation for 10 years. Now that we're all talking about this, how can we start streamlining our capital stacks? Because right now for developers, you gotta have a lot of money to play in this arena. You gotta have a lot of time to play in this arena. Now that we're all having this conversation online, how do we start modernizing, streamlining the processes for LIHTC, for vouchers? And then one quick other item, we could talk about this for like 4 or 5 more hours. There may need to be a part 2, but like the difference between attainable housing and affordable housing. When you say attainable, that's what I've been using a whole lot myself, compared to affordable, because people get iffy on a lot of that conversation with you. Talk about NIMBYism. Anyways, streamlining.
We could talk for 4 or 5 hours about streamlining. I would say from a city perspective, focusing in on code and zoning and land use regulations, and how can you remove barriers to development. All of those barriers, the time, the cost, the complexity of those zoning codes and all of that creates more cost on the developer, which they then have to get from somewhere. And so when we talk about streamlining, that's a huge thing. I know that the state has been talking, some of the representatives have been talking about that, and providing toolkits for local governments on how to make their zoning codes more friendly to affordable housing. So I think that's what I would say. There's also some really technical things about the LIHTC program that need to be fixed. And the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is maybe a start to that. But there's a lot of things. What was it, 1986, is that right? It's an old program, and it needs to be modernized, and there's a lot of nuances there that I would say would help a lot in streamlining and making things more efficient.
This might be a little too inside baseball, but you're kind of getting me on the track. OFA, we redid our design and architectural standards this year, so that's like the blueprint of how these developments have to look. And I think over the years, maybe there was like technical changes, additions here, and it became something completely different. And our staff basically just broke it down, completely restarted it, modernized it, got rid of a lot of contradictions, and there was a lot of public feedback to the development community, local government. So I think it's something we're seeing is governments are giving us more money and resources. We do have to be responsive and be efficient with those resources so that the grassroots side of it are seeing the benefit, and it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Do you all have time for one more question? Okay. And it is 9 o'clock, so if you need to leave, you are totally fine. I respect that. Just don't make a ruckus. All right, gentlemen, right there.
Hello, thanks so much, Brian Winbush. I'm a nonprofit leader and a pastor here in the city. I pastor a church that's in the Livingston corridor, Old Oaks area of Bethany Christian Church. And growing up, my father, he owns real estate in a small town in North Carolina. One of the things he was always focused on is keeping rents at a certain level. And so as I'm hearing these conversations, I feel like there's so much being done for consumers. And then talk, at the higher level. So I'm curious about the involvement of just the local level, people who own, the developers, and is there some onus on those groups to maybe shift what they're doing as far as costs for the community?
I think so. I think what we're also seeing is a lot of developers come in and purchase a lot in bulk. And so that is having a very large effect on how communities are transitioning within the time frame. So kind of to everybody's point, like they have to show up to the table. And a lot of times everybody is, I am a man for myself, or a woman, sorry. And we're losing the ability, I won't even say ability, we're losing the aspect of face-to-face conversation, and that is really, really big. There's a lot of understanding and/or the ability to get people to buy in to how to fix things and how to do things, because we want to sit behind our phones and we want to sit behind a computer and not have those face-to-face interactions or those hard conversations. Right? Every conversation is not going to be easy, so they have to buy in. And so I think that it's very, very, very important for the smaller owners within the community to actually have a say and voice their opinion, as well as make meaningful change when the community says, hey, this is what we need out of the owners that are within the community.
As a executive director of a nonprofit organization that builds houses, owns property, commercial and residential, involved in construction, programming, community engagement, so on and so forth, I am forced to budget, just like everybody in this room, right? I have a business to run, but I also have a heart for the people in my community that I'm there to serve. So let me give you an example. In my apartment block, we have a quarterly tenant meeting, so connection, right? That one-on-one connection, understanding, sharing information, hearing what's going on, how do we improve our communication processes, maintenance, so on and so forth. How do we keep our rents consistent? I need to rehab the apartments so that their quality of life improves, because what I won't be is a slumlord, right? So I need to do that, and they're like, oh my God, is the rent gonna go up? I'm not gonna raise your rent, but how do I afford a $720,000 rehab budget and not increase your rent? These are the numbers that the small developers are forced to deal with. So that's where I have to have a very sharp pencil and super smart people on my team, because I don't do math, that can help me figure this out, right? How do you pencil that out? Where do I go to partners to get some of the supportive funding to subsidize the things so I can keep my extremely low income offering in my mixed income development without raising the rent, improve your quality of life? Oh, and oh, by the way, hope you get a better job so maybe you can afford something better and move out into a new house that I built. So it's a full cycle of thinking and concern, but it starts being very human-centric first. How do I serve this person in the best way possible on today without stressing them out, providing assistance, pointing them to the right resources, but making sure that my business will still be here in 20 years and continue to offer that to the next generation. So none of this is easy, but I hear you, I understand you, it's my daily walk to try and balance that, and I think every developer, small developer, is up against it, to try and make that work. So, we need your input, we need your support, we need your prayers, we need your push to help bring investment dollars to what's happening to local development. I think there's more conversation in part 3, talk about how do we innovate funding strategies and building capital stacks. There is money out there. There is money out there. How do we get access to it? How do we build a funding system stream so that money can be put into the pots to help housing development? People are talking about affordability, attainability, and I know people want to help, and they have money, but they don't know where to put it. They don't trust some of the resources that are out there. So let's have that conversation next.
Can I add one more thing to that? Education is really, really important, and not in a formalized way, but for those of us who have parents who own homes in these communities, being able to also understanding what it means to be a homeowner, understanding family planning is really important, because what I'm currently seeing is as people are passing homes down through the family, people are just walking into a situation they have zero idea about what to do, and then you've got larger developers coming in and saying, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take all of your problems away." Yeah, I'll take all of your problems away. Do you know the taxes are going to increase by such and such and such because the community around it is growing? Encouraging having conversations with our older population who currently owns the bulk of those homes, as well as the middle ground, right, to know what to do. And a lot of people shy away from family planning and estate planning because you're constantly thinking about, I don't want to talk about debt, or I don't want to talk about, what we do. I don't want to have an argument about who's getting what house. Those are conversations that have to be had, because if we don't have those conversations, when that time comes, nothing's more chaotic than a wedding and a funeral.
And probate.
And probate. I'm going through it right now. So,
And we about to go through it too.
yes, so having those conversations in advance is going to be really, really helpful, especially in the communities that are being changed in transition, like the King Lincolns, the German villages, the Italian villages, etc. That's going to be really important. So education.
And really, really fast, as a landlord, accept housing choice vouchers.
Yeah.
That's a huge practical thing that you can do. Be involved with CMHA, use their landlord resources. There's other resources for landlords, but just accept the housing choice voucher. That's a huge thing that you can do.
Awesome. Well, and thank you for the questions. I know we have more, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. But if anything that I learned from today, some of our thoughtful questions, is that it's important that this is the most people we've had all year at one of these events. And so that, to me, I'm optimistic about. It's refreshing to see new faces who are interested in learning more and having these conversations that, as you said, could go on for hours and hours. So I'm happy and pleased to see a lot of creative and passionate folks in the room today. So can we give a round of applause for our I think most of them, if not all of them, are on LinkedIn. So if